So you kind of got introduced to me, and I want to start with a question. How many of you, when either searching a product or after you've purchased a product, had an issue or had a question? How many of you, when this happens, right, whether you're pre-purchase or post-purchase, use email to email that question? Raise your hand. If you're emailing a brand, one. How many of you pick up the phone and call? All right, a little bit more. How many of you go to social media channels and ask your question, whether it's pre-purchase or post-purchase there? Okay, yeah, a few more, so half. Well, what's happening is that more and more people are using social media, as I'm sure I don't have to tell you. And a lot of what's happening on these channels are both post-purchase and pre-purchase questions, so acquisition and retention. So we're going to go through kind of how this works today, how you can operationalize social media customer care for both acquisition and retention. But first, we're going to get into like some of the woo-woo stuff, like the psychology behind conversations that connect. A little bit about me that wasn't said in the intro. I'm a horse mom. That's my fur baby, Diva. She'll be 17 in a couple of weeks. And as it was already mentioned, I teach a couple of courses. I have a new one that I'm going to be teaching soon about the voice of the customer. And I actually have a book coming out next month. It's all about what we're talking about today. So I'm really excited about this topic. So how do brands gain trust and loyalty? The biggest thing that we're facing as marketers right now is the war of attention and then the war of loyalty, right? We first have to capture that attention so that we can close a new customer or acquire a new customer. But then once they become a customer, how do we keep them, right? How do we retain that customer so that they keep coming back? Because I'm sure we all know it's easier to keep and maintain customers than it is to go out and have to find new ones. So this is an old picture and it's kind of embarrassing, but it proves a point. I did my undergraduate thesis work on this terrible name, brilliant concept. Social penetration theory is the name of the concept. And essentially it's these two social psychologists back in the 70s who tried to understand, how do we form relationships? How do we trust another human? Right? How do we go and build these relationships that we decide to have with acquaintances, with our partners, with work people, or even as a consumer to a brand? And what they said, Altman and Taylor were their names, was that we actually form relationships through self-disclosure, right? So if I like you and I meet you, we were doing this earlier today, right? We got these questions and we were disclosing information about each other. And if you heard someone's answer and you liked what they said, you liked that disclosure, you might disclose some information about yourself back to them, right? But what I liked about the questions is they went deep on the disclosure scale. And what happens with brands and their content is we're not getting deep. We're living in cliches and facts. We're not getting to opinions and feelings, which is where that trust in that relationship is formed. So let's kind of break it down. How we build trust, again, is through self-disclosure. And the social penetration theory, obviously named by psychologists and not marketers, is also called the onion theory, okay? So when you think of an onion, it has lots of layers, right? When you try to get to the middle of the onion or to the heart of the onion, it takes a lot of peeling. You have to peel back all the different layers. Brands, marketers, live in breadth, the outside of the onion, right? This is where cliches happen. This is where facts happen. If we want to get to know someone and get to trust someone, we have to go deeper into the onion, or depth, as we call it. And there's basically 4 levels of disclosures, which I've kind of already mentioned, but cliches, facts, opinions, and feelings. And I'm going to go through some examples for you on those. Here's cliche, right? Here's some branded content from Pro Flowers. This is your reminder to stop and smell the roses. I mean, it's clever, right? It's witty. They're a flower company. But this is kind of basic. we've heard it before, right? It actually is a cliche statement that I'm using here in the example. But cliches are kind of these regular, everyday conversations that we have. Maybe we were stuck in the elevator this morning before we kind of had the icebreaker, and we kind of stood there awkwardly, and I said, hey, and you said, hey. I said, really nice day today, huh? Yeah, weather's great. Like, we're not really, doing anything to move the relationship forward, but this is a lot of where we sit, right? That surface level talk, cliche talk, but it does not help you make a connection, which is what we as marketers are trying to do with our consumers, make that very important connection. So let's talk about facts, right? Facts seem good because this is where a lot of brands live with their content. They're going to tell you what their hours are. They're going to tell you where they're located. They're going to tell you about all of their new products features. But facts, to actually be considered a self-disclosure, must be intentional, significant, and not otherwise known. Okay? So I want you to think about all of the branded content that you see, and think about the facts that you see them sharing, and how much of them actually fit as a self-disclosure based on that definition of fact. Not very many. So this is an example of American Air. Who has the Emerald Isle on their brain today? Thanks to our partner Aer Lingus, you can spend St. Patrick's Day or any day in destinations like this. And they have some photos around Ireland. It's factual. You could certainly spend St. Patty's Day in any of those amazing places. Highly recommended, by the way. But what are we doing to build the relationship? What am I seeing with American Air? We talked earlier about the surveys and environmentally showing that you're able to support someone's buying decision by being closely aligned to their personal values. How is American Air showing me what their brand values, even though this content's very factual? How do I know I want to align with this brand versus another airline who I may understand their brand values better and then may align with them in a trustful way because they've disclosed that information to me? So let's get into opinions, right? Opinions are more revealing than facts, obviously. And opinions expose more information about ourselves or about the brand. And whereas a fact is an objective truth, an opinion means it's true for you. So if I say it's raining today, that's a fact if it were actually raining, otherwise I might be lying. But if I say, when it rains, I get depressed, what am I giving you then? I'm giving you an opinion, but also a feeling, right? The rain makes me depressed. I'm unhappy when it rains. That's going beyond an opinion and telling you more information or a disclosure about myself. And you could say, wow, I get really depressed when it rains. Want to be my best friend? Or you could say, that's really depressing that you think it's depressing when it rains because I love the rain and I don't want to be friends with you, right? This is kind of how we decide if we want to move that relationship forward. So here's another one from Pro Flowers, and it's an opinion, but it's still a little cliche in my book. It says, I can't and won't slander carnations. They're gorge. Hashtag unpopular opinion. Way cuter, right? I like this opinion a lot more than that cliche we looked at. But they're saying, like, hey, a lot of people think carnations are throwaway flowers. We actually think they're great. This is an example from my home state of Texas of Whataburger. Does anybody up here even know what Whataburger is? Oh, fantastic. Like 2 people. Okay. It is basically the world's best fast food place. It's in southern states, and you can see it's pronounced Whataburger as far as like phonetically looking at the name. But they went online and they asked their community, quick question, is it Whataburger or Waterburger? Because at this point, even we're confused. And they got almost 18,000 likes. They got a huge number of retweets, a huge number of conversations happening with people sharing their opinion. And by the way, if you are from the South, everybody knows it's Waterburger, okay? No matter how it's spelled. And people were riveted. You know, there's another brand, if you're all marketers here, are any of you familiar with SEM or SEMrush? They did a similar thing where they asked, like, hey, is it SEMrush or is it SEMrush? We want to know. And they got all these responses, right? So opinions and feelings, I know it sounds scary to kind of go there with that content as a marketer or as a brand. But this is where everything happens in the conversation. It's why our tagline is think conversation, not campaign, because there's so much you can pull from your content if you're focusing on opinions and feelings to move the relationship forward. So let's look at the final level, feelings. This is the holy grail. So it's obviously the deepest level of disclosure, and I'm obviously telling you what I feel as a person or a brand and what you should feel, but what it really does is it gives a clearer picture on how the relationship between people or brand and consumers might move forward. It's also particularly important for building empathy and trust. And how many times as marketers do we hear that we need more empathy, like on the daily, right? This is how you do it. This post, if you can't read it, I'll read it out loud. She met him at the office. He was bold and vibrant, yet somehow dark and smooth. He was a brilliant communicator and helped her feel more connected to the world around her and even more connected to herself. He didn't mind when she pushed his buttons. It's about a pen. It's from the Sharpie company, right? This is an opinion and feeling post in the way of storytelling, right? We always talk about storytelling and how important it is to be a great storyteller as a marketer, but oftentimes we're doing it with cliches and fact information. It's not a very good story. We may be connecting in a small way, but if we want to connect in a big way, we need to start telling stories with our own brand values, opinions, and feelings, and then also asking our consumers for theirs, right? What are your opinions? What are your feelings? With the book that I have coming out, I had the cover all chosen. I thought I knew what everybody was going to love. And then somebody said, well, if you're going to write a book about opinions and feelings, maybe you should ask people about their opinion on the cover. I felt pretty good about it. I was like, yeah, cool, great. So we created 2 throwaway, quote unquote, covers. And I sent it out, email, LinkedIn, social. Which cover do you choose? Resoundingly, everybody chose number 3, which was one of the throwaway covers. So now this cover that I thought I was going to publish with, I'm not going to publish with because I listened to the voice of the customer. I'm not the customer. I'm selling this product. I need to understand what the voice of the customer is, what their opinions and their feelings are about this book cover. And now that I've told them, hey, you all said you want 3, and that's the one I'm going to publish with, what do you think happens when you get buy-in like that? Imagine you're a makeup brand, and you ask, hey, for our spring palette, should we go with purple or pink? And you let people choose. And if they all choose pink, what do you think happens for that brand with that new product release? Anybody? Sales go up because you feel like you're connected with it. You're a part of it. You made that choice. I chose pink, and now I want to own that pink because I chose that. Here's another great example of a brand using opinions and feelings. This is Patagonia. I'm sure a lot of you know this brand. They're an outdoor apparel brand. And this was several months ago, but basically they came out and they put this post on all of their social media channels. And they said, we're going to stop advertising on Facebook platforms it was a few years ago, in June 2020, because they spread hate speech and misinformation about climate change and our democracy. And we're going to continue to stand by this boycott several months later. The reason why this is an opinion and feeling post is because that's their opinion that Facebook spreads hate speech and misinformation about climate change, right? But as a brand, they're telling you what their feelings are about climate change. And this makes sense for Patagonia as a brand. They're an outdoor apparel company. Their consumers, more than likely, are also very aligned with climate change. They're probably climate supporters. So what they're doing by sharing this opinion and these feelings is aligning themselves closer with consumers who will probably buy more of their product because it's a company who supports climate change. They also want to move further away from companies like Facebook to show how they're not connected. Dissolution is normal, right? I think as marketers, we get scared when we lose a subscriber or our social follower count go down, you want dissolution. You want to get closer to the people who are going to buy more from you and not those who are going to buy less or not at all. So how many of you know Jay Baer, famous marketer? Jay recently teamed up with Forrester to do some research. And the research is all about the reimagined customer. This is today's consumer. And essentially what they discovered was that 2/3 of consumers want to do business with those who support their similar values. So the brand values align with my consumer values. I'm a climate change supporter. Patagonia's a climate change supporter. Again, we talked earlier about the environmental survey. If you knew that your software company was a supporter of environmental issues, maybe you would choose them over the next guy because the price is the same. What they found in this research was that it's not just for like little things like clothes and cars. People were actually willing to switch banks, financial institutions, if they could align with that brand based on similar values. So I want you to, if you leave here with one thing today, I want you to understand that dissolution is not a bad thing. You want to get a tighter circle of people who are connected to your brand values, and then purchase from you more. And I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going through the practical, we'll get to the tactical. So, let's get into social media. This is actually really interesting because McKinsey did a study a couple of years into COVID, and basically they said that the pandemic has accelerated digital transformation from anywhere from 3 years up to 10 years in some places on the globe. So this is all across the globe. So what that means is more and more people are now going online. We're spending our time online, obviously during the pandemic when we were on lockdown. That's kind of where we went to hang out with everybody. Think about shopping. Shopping now online is incredible. You've got live commerce. You've got social commerce. You've got conversational commerce. There's all kinds of commerce happening on social media and the web. And then how many of you here are interested in Web3 and NFTs, the metaverse? Anybody? What do you think is going to happen when all of that comes to fruition? Now we're a little bit out. It's going to take some time for everybody to adopt and build the infrastructure for the metaverse. You're very excited back there. Very excited. I said you're very excited. Very excited. But even though it's going to change where and how we do things online in the metaverse, we still need to have those people at the ready, right? Those people who are helping you make those pre-purchase or those post-purchase questions. Here's another stat from Sprout Social that looked at how online usage for social media increased by generation. Every generation increased usage during the pandemic, including, I have the world's smallest ears, sorry. There we go. Get on there. Like literally small. So every generation increased their usage online, even those who were super hesitant, the baby boomers. They even started to use online by as much as 54% increase during the pandemic. So we're kind of all online. Blanket statement, not everybody, but a lot of us are spending our time there, figuring out what to buy and to connect with people like us. So I want to talk about the digital customer journey. How many of you know or have mapped out your digital customer journey for your brand? Raise your hand. A couple. That's great. And if you haven't, that's okay. We're going to talk through it a little bit today. But essentially, the digital customer journey is the journey that your customer goes on digitally, right? How did they find out about our brand? How many of you are running paid search ads, online ads? Like half of y'all. That might be something in awareness, where somebody finds out about your brand through a paid media. It could be through SEO, search, right? So all throughout the digital customer journey, there are these little touch points where people interact with your brand, right? Through awareness, a consideration, evaluation, purchase, once they own the product, loyalty, evangelism, and then hopefully repurchasing. And my whole point today is how we've been using social-led customer care to help enterprise global brands not only find more customers, get more customers to buy, acquisition, but also how to support them, how to retain them, and how to win that war on loyalty. This is a flywheel that we created. How many of you have read Jim Collins' Good to Great? Anybody? A few. It's a lot happening on this side of the room. Great book, by the way, if you haven't read it. But he created a flywheel, and he put growth in the center of that flywheel, right? It's kind of like, how do we get self-propelling growth as a company, as a business? We recreated the flywheel, and what we did was we put the customer and customer care in the center. Because as it pertains to the digital customer journey, literally what we're doing and what we're going to talk about today is looking at how to acquire, right, pre-purchase awareness, new customers through social, and then how to retain them, how to make them loyal. So first we have to connect, then we have to converse, the whole conversation, opinions, feelings thing. Then hopefully we can get them to convert. And cherry on top, what is everybody talking about these days? Community. You know where community happens? In the conversation, not on the content, right? Everything as far as that whole relationship, opinions and feelings, yes, it comes from the content, but it happens in the conversation under that content. So you have to be thinking about how to have these conversations and use opinions and feelings in the conversations to connect, converse, convert, and then maybe even find some community members for your brand. So let's get into the crux of it, which is social-led customer care. How many of you right now are using social-led customer care at your company? Meaning you have like a specific team or people who have a directive to use social-led customer care. At Scott's, right? Will you just tell us really quickly, if I give you the box, what it means to y'all, like how you do it?
Our team is kind of spread out. They're a pretty good sized team. So we have chatbots on our own sites, as well as the 800 number, as well as an email channel. So we've kind of branched.
So do the chatbots take care of all of your social media needs?
You hope they do.
Yeah, you hope, right? And what happens, out of curiosity, if like I come and I'm like, I try to think of a lawn question that a bot couldn't answer. I accidentally mixed such and such product with such and such product. Am I gonna burn my grass? Will the bot know how to answer that?
It can handle some aspects of like, I live in this region, what fertilizer type should I use and that kind of thing. But as far as that deep of a dive, it would probably give the response of, if you need further help, call this.
It has like a human option.
Yeah, it has.
And then what happens when the human comes on board? Is it someone from like the customer care team?
Yep.
The internal customer care team?
Yep.
Okay, great.
And they're all brand knowledgeable to be able to talk the customer through that.
Very important. Yeah, so when we talk about social-led customer care, a lot of times, thank you, by the way, a lot of times what people think we're talking about is bots, automation, right? And I have nothing against AI and bots. In fact, I think they're incredible tools. However, it's really easy. Someone earlier, I think it was you, with the hospital, right? You were talking about how a lot of your frequently asked questions are, where are you located, right? If you're getting where are you located day in and day out on your social channels, a bot can really easily answer that. And that's obviously better than a human because a bot can operate 24/7. They don't need any breaks. They don't care if you work from home or you're in the office or you've got ping pong tables. They don't care about any of that stuff, right? And they can answer things simultaneously. So a bot could be answering several different people asking where are you located at the same time. They never get tired. They never need a break. Their boyfriend never breaks up with them, But sometimes questions come through that a bot can't answer. We found we work with a $1 billion electronics brand. They have sewing machines, they make printers, they do label makers. A lot of the questions we get coming through on social, especially support questions, like post-purchase questions, are very nuanced, right? It's like I have this model sewing machine and the tip of the needle broke and then it punched a hole in my pad for my whatever. I'm not a sewist, but very nuanced question where a bot really couldn't come in and answer that, right? You know what else a bot can't give you when you're having a rough time with something? We touched on it earlier. Anybody? Empathy. Bots cannot give empathy. They can give patented empathy based on conversational workflows, right? Like, oh, so sorry, right? But they can't be like, I'm so sorry, Mr. Customer, that mirroring what they said. So that's the great thing too about feelings and opinions. When something bad is happening, you can mirror the opinions and feelings of the person that you're speaking to, and they feel like you are empathetic to what they're going through, right? So when we look at social-led customer care, what's happening with all of the things that I just talked about with the pandemic and all these people rushing online and all this online shopping and the metaverse is that social media is actually becoming the preferred channel for reaching out for customer service, for that support, that post-purchase question. It's also becoming the consumer's channel of choice for sharing feedback. And what's so important about that feedback is Tom so lovely gave me a tee up. You left off talking about emotions. Now here we are talking about emotions, right? But collecting that information is huge. The key to first-party relationships, which if any of you have heard about, cookie apocalypse coming with Google, anybody heard about this and how we all need first-party data? Guess where? There's all kinds of first-party data. Social media. Because we don't just go there and give our names or our job title, right? Really boring facts. We tell you our opinions about your stuff, even if you don't like it. We tell you our feelings about your stuff, even if we don't like it. And my advice to you is to be a negative Nancy. Get that information, write it down, and then do something about it, because that is the only place where there's a catalyst for change. If everything came in and said, you're perfect, you're amazing, we're going to buy from you forever, that would be great, but that doesn't happen, right? No one's perfect, no brand is perfect, no product is perfect, but where we can make change is when people come to us and they say, hey, I really didn't like this about your new product. You released that new flower thing and I hated it. And then you could say, why'd you hate it? Right? Probably not the bot. The bot's going to be like, sorry. But you could say, well, why did you hate it? Because it smelled awful. I loved the job that it did, but it smelled so bad that I was dry heaving every time I tried to feed my flowers. Right? Then what do you do with that information? I hope, and this is what we're doing, we're taking this information back to other teams. We're not just operating inside of social media. We're taking it back to the product team. And we're saying, hey, we got to do something about this smell. 86% of our online chatter is about this new product, but 80 of that is about how awful the smell is. We got to fix this. And then if you tell people, hey, we listen to your opinions and your feelings. This doesn't really exist, so I feel bad I'm picking on you, but we listened to what you said. You hate the smell, and guess what? The new and improved formula has an amazing smell. It smells like rainbows and unicorns, and you're going to love it. So now you're not only telling your consumer, we listen to you, which how many brands ever say that or do that? Very few. But you're not only saying that you listen, but you're saying, I took what you said to heart. You mean something to me. Here are my feelings about you. My opinion is you matter, and I value what you're saying, and I value it so much that we changed our product. What do you think will happen? Well, more people will buy. More people will be loyal. And it sounds hard and easy at the same time, but so few brands are doing this that if you do this, I promise it will set you apart. So here's how we define social-led customer care. It's basically the service of responding to specific demands, questions, or pain points of current and would-be customers via social media. And I want you to underline this, write it down, take a picture. Yes, take a picture. It's one of the only marketing initiatives that both acquires and retains customers. A lot of things retain customers, A lot of things acquire customers. This is an initiative that if you get behind it, does both. And I'm going to go through how it does both. So here are some examples of pre-purchase and post-purchase questions, just so that we're all on the same page. This top one here says, my sewing machine either needs to be cleaned or is finally dying. Which it's a Walmart Brother machine I've had since like 2013, so she's had a really good run. Now, have you noticed anything in particular about this top example versus this bottom example? I'll read the bottom one and see if one of you smarties figures it out. This one says, at Brother Office. We've been looking for the Brother Color Laser, AIO, more numbers, for many months and have several clients who are interested in buying them or in need of them. Is there any information about when or whether the product will be available? Right, so these are two pre-purchase questions, post and pre kind of. Any idea on what the difference is between the two? Anybody catch it? It's like one of those little riddles. What was that magazine called in the doctor's office where you would like look for the riddles? Anyways. Yes! Highlights, yes. All right, the first one is talking to Brother about Brother, right? Their Brother sewing machine. But they did not tag the brand. The second example, this person's talking to Brother about another sewing, this is a printer, but they tagged the brand. So a lot of people, when they go to social, might be like your grandma using social. My grandma, she's great at posting pictures, not so great at like the conversational part of that happens on social. So a lot of people think when they just mention Brother into the ether of social, that Brother's gonna come and respond to that request, right? But if you're not looking for your specific branded information or using social listening, which I know George is gonna talk about next, and I'm super excited, I'm gonna talk about it a little bit, then they would never see this support request. This is someone ready to buy, right? These are pre-purchase questions. Here's another example. Oh, this one's terrible because I use Kerastase and I love it. Kerastase is like hair stuff. Kerastase, I'm having problems checking out. Is something happening? She got no response. A week later, Kerastase, it's been almost a week. I have pending charges, but none of my orders are going through. What is happening? And they still didn't respond to her. They have like almost 100,000 followers. They tweet, they post, they answer other people, but they didn't answer this lady. Show of hands, how many think she'll be buying Kerastase again after this experience? Anybody? No. Because now it's easier than ever to find a brand that does exactly the same thing and has these conversations with us online or aligns with our own opinions and feelings and our own personal values. Here's another one. Looking for some new social listening tool, SM Pros, what are you using? And then of course I go in because I love talking about social listening. And I'm like, Sprout Social for the win. And I tag Sprout Social. And then I say their customer support is tops because this is a value for me as a customer. And what do customers do? What do we help our friends with? Peer-to-peer recommendations. So now I'm coming in and I'm giving that recommendation, but I'm also giving her a value. They have great customer service because we all know terrible customer service is just unacceptable. We don't like it, and too many people have it. And then Sprout did come in, and they also said, hey, what's up, Nikki? Let us know if we can talk to you. They weren't tagged. I came through and tagged them, but if you were using social listening, in that first example, if you were listening for your brand name, you would see that first person. Let me go back. You would see this top person because you're using social listening to help identify some of your branded keywords and terms, right? So I'd be able to see that. I'd be able to answer it. Same thing in this second example, looking for new social listening tools. If I had the keyword social listening tools set up as a listener, because my company provides social listening tools, I would also be able to find these pre-purchase questions where people were asking about something that I could sell them, right? Social selling. Let's talk about acquisition and retention. How many of you, show of hands, think social chatter all the conversation that's happening on social. How many of you think most of the social chatter is acquisition? And I'll do retention next. How many of you think the majority of social chatter, right, with brands and consumers happening online is acquisition? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you think it's retention? Meaning most of the conversations happening between brand and consumers is post-purchase support. Most of you. Nobody raised their hand for number one. So this is a fun thing we did with social listening. If you use social listening, the very first thing I would have you do is set up an acquisition and a retention tag so that you can tag all incoming conversation to your brand with acquisition or retention. We asked all of our customer care clients the same question. How much of your social chatter do you think is acquisition? How much do you think is retention? They told us resoundingly, all of them, we think acquisition is only 0 to 5% of the chatter happening with our brand on social. So we did a test. And you can see this first picture here. This is that enterprise tech brand that we were talking about. Their acquisition tag, this is March's report, so month before last. Their acquisition tag for this product line, this is one product line, 62%. The retention tag was 38.8. That's 62% of the total volume of questions that came in that were either support or acquisition of sales chatter. People asking questions about their products because they were in the buying moment, right? Here's another one. This is another product line. 80%, 79.3% from this product line in March was acquisition. 80% of the chatter was about buying their stuff. How many of you are trying to sell more stuff? How many of you came to this conference because you want to learn how to be a better marketer, which ultimately means selling more stuff? It's happening out there on social, and people think it's not. Here's another one, 71.7%. And another one, 53.8%. Here's another one, 80%. Basically, every single client had well over 5%. Most of them had over 50% chatter. So what I'm telling you is, if you have a social team or a social presence, you need to be looking at the conversations that are happening, because a lot of it is acquisition. And this will help change your marketing leaders, your C-suite. A lot of them, I know this because I talk to them every day, they still think there's no value in organic social media. And I'm here to tell you, there is. There's a lot of it. And guess what else you can do? How many of you have been to a bar? Just raise your hand. Yeah, most of us. All right. Have you ever been to a bar and something happened? There was a long wait, or somebody made you an awful drink, and they were like, "I'm so sorry. Here's one on the house." Does that happen to anybody? Yeah. Last night. I hate it when that happens, but at least you got a replacement. What if you took this little house bar tab idea, okay, and you gave it to your social team? And when that acquisition chatter is happening, "Hey, brother, really looking for this printer. Is it available?" "It is available. It is in stock. So glad you reached out. How can we help you?" "Well, I'm thinking about buying this, but I'm looking at another one." "Well, which one are you looking at?" "Oh, your competitor Epson." "Well, okay, let us tell you. Ours is different in XYZ. "Great, but I still don't know if I want to buy today. What if I took that little bartender house tab, gave it to my social team, and they said something like, 'If you buy it today, I can give you a $50 coupon, or I can give you a link for free shipping, or we're having a BOGO event. Here you go.'" Probably not on printers, but Now, that little link, whatever it is going to get attributed to what in your P&Ls? Social media, organic social media. Really quickly, you can start to change the C-suite's mind when you can start to attribute actual return on investment, which everybody says it's not there with organic. Yes, it is. You have to just think a little bit more deeply. You have to have people there looking at the conversations, using social media, tagging all the things. But truly, it's happening. I know it's happening because it's happening for our clients, but it can happen for you too. It's not hard, I promise. The other great thing about social media, well, it could also be not so great. I find it great, but some people might disagree, is that it's a spectator sport, right? Everybody saw when Little Miss reached out to Kerastos and they didn't respond. Everybody's there watching, right? They're seeing how you answer these questions, how you respond, how you have these conversations. They're seeing if you're sharing opinions and feelings about your brand values to see if they match their own, because they want to align now, right? We're over content. I'm sorry if anybody's talking about content marketing later, but content is not what we crave. It's connection. And if your content can help make those connections, you're going to win the marketing game. The fun thing about the pandemic, and this, I really don't mean this isn't fun at all, is that more people are obviously not happy. Let's just put it that way. And what happens when they're not happy? They complain a lot. And they're more likely to complain when something goes bad on social than they are to say good things or when things go right. So this is research from the Wall Street Journal, and actually unhappy customers complain to about 7 people on average, whereas happy customers explain or talk about their experience to only about 4 people. But here's the great thing about this. Here's the silver lining. Research has found that when somebody does come to you with that negative feeling or that feedback about your stinky flower product, and you fix it, you showed them that you listened, and you fix it, it can actually become an event where they become more loyal, that the relationship grows. So this is your chance to not only listen, but to fix things and help win that war on loyalty through some of the conversations that are probably already happening online. So here's how you can actually operationalize this. I'm going to give you like a quick framework for how to do this. The first step is that you have to figure out what your FAQs are. We kind of hit on this earlier too in Tom's presentation. You've got to know what the questions are. But what's so great about knowing what the questions are is that you can build out an FAQ base, which we'll talk about. Second is you have to triage your conversations. Not all of them are going to be happy. In fact, a lot of them might be bad, depending on the product or the service that you're selling. And you need to understand, when I get that negative feedback, can I handle it? Can I solve it right there on the front line as the social person? Or let's pretend we're a financial institution. I might need to get somebody's password or balance information, and I'm not privy to that on the front line. So what's the process for getting problems like that, which are frequent in financial institutions, answered? Use social listening, which we'll talk about more next, to code and tag your conversation. So I told you about the acquisition retention tags. For big product-led companies, they often tag by product line, because then they can see not only how much of their own content that's going out talks about each one of those product lines, they can also see what's coming in from consumers, right? If the consumers are talking about printers like crazy, but not our sewing machines or our label makers, we probably don't need to share more sewing machine content. We need to focus on printers and label makers to get the conversation started, right? And then you're obviously going to measure your goals. You have to understand what your goals are. And from those goals, usually business goals, you can then figure out what your key performance indicators are and your metrics, including sentiment. Does everybody know what brand sentiment is? We'll probably talk about it more next. But it's an amazing thing that social listening does, where it actually takes all of the conversation that it's monitoring, and it says, this much is positive, this much is neutral, this much is negative. Once again, the negative is where we like to spend the most of our time, because that's the catalyst for change. Not very many brands are listening, and certainly they're not listening and making change based on what the voice of the customer is. And then that's the 5th one. Basically, you're taking all of this social intelligence that you're gathering from all these conversations, whether they're early on in acquisition or late in post-purchase, and you're improving all of the things within the company based on the voice of the customer. So frequently asked questions, this is just an example. Really simple. You go out and you look at all the frequently asked questions that you have. Do they happen on Twitter or Facebook? Do they happen on all of our channels? What are the most frequently asked questions that we get that a bot could answer? What are some of the questions that we get that a bot can't answer? Looking at your FAQs is a perfect way to start because it'll tell you, can we use bots? Do we need humans? Which channels do we need to focus on? Seasonality, timing, all of that comes from understanding how your frequently asked questions happen online. Triage, we use a really simple system for triage. We just call it the stoplight system. So we label things as red, yellow, or green. Green means that the front line, the social team, can close out that request. So we get the request and we're able to answer that question right then and there, close out the ticket, right? Yellow is for like those really weird questions that you think you'll never get, but always pop up. Like I kid you not, every time we're like, we can't possibly get one more weird question, we get another weird question. And yellows don't stay yellows. Essentially, they become greens, right? You might have to go to the legal department and say, how do we legally answer this weird question? They help you out, it becomes a green. A red, where it also could become, means it's something that you can't solve. So let's say we work with a luxury appliance company. If somebody comes through on social for support and says, hey, my refrigerator stopped working, I can't solve that on the front line as the social team. I actually have to send it to my service department, and they have to have somebody, schedule to come out, fix the fridge. So now my time to resolution, right, to solve that problem doesn't just sit with me. It sits with other departments. So we share our time to resolution with other departments. So that's kind of how we triage things. And here's an example, really easy example of how we kind of tier things out. Green, yellow, red. I'll let y'all see you're taking a picture. So just an example, but typically yellows don't stay. You want more greens, right? You add those greens to your FAQ documentation. It's that living, breathing document so you can answer every question. You get legal involved, you get the regulators involved, whatever you need depending on the industry that you're in. But now we have an answer for every question that's ever come in, unless it's new and weird. Then we get the answer and turn it into a green. All right, social listening, which I'll only touch on a little bit because we're going to go into depth on that next. But social monitoring and social listening are not the same thing, and I think a lot of people confuse this. Social monitoring is probably what all of you are doing. It's the 101 of social, right? It's very basic. We're looking at things that are coming in. Either somebody tagged us or they sent us a DM. That's very reactive. It's typically one-off. Social listening is going beyond the basics and kind of like going to graduate school. And it helps us be proactive. So we can listen to brand keywords. We can listen to industry keywords. We can even listen to our competitors' conversations, which is really awesome because we work with a big running shoe brand and we look at their competitor stuff all the time. And we basically like to be negative Nancy's and look at the negative stuff that the competitor brand audience is saying about them. And then what do? We go create content for our brand that speaks to the pain points they're having with their brand. Oh, your shoelaces break all the time? Well, let me just put an ad together talking about how our shoelaces last 374 runs. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but you know what I mean? We can take all of this social intelligence that's happening through conversations online and make our brand stand out. But you have to listen. So really quick, fun exercise. I want you to take your hands and cup your ears. Right? You got it? Like you're like kind of like the shape of your ear. Now, I want you to do this. What happens when you take the shape of your ears from both ears and put them together? You get a heart. You know why? Because listening is the only way to the heart. You have to listen to your customer if you want to win their trust and loyalty. Yes. I'll give you a quick case study. So here is a case study that we do with a financial institution. Hard business to be in, right? A lot of red tape, a lot of regulations, a lot of fees. We really on the consumer side really got how many fees can you get going here? So does everybody understand what a downtime is with a financial institution? You have those like downtimes or those outages. Essentially, banks and credit unions use this downtime to update their software, right? Banks use a lot of software to kind of keep things moving and grooving on the back end. And this client really had a lot of negative chatter around downtimes, which is normal, right? The bank's not working, the online services aren't working. It's normal to complain. But they wanted to understand and quantify the data around those complaints. So we used social listening. We looked at all the conversations. We tagged everything positive, negative, neutral. Now, social listening does have sentiment out of the box, but I want to make a point. I'm going to say a bad word. I'm warning you, okay? But the reason why humans are so important, even with social listening, is because machines, even though they're great and they do the whole natural language processing, they still don't know the difference between this is shit and this is the shit. We all know that little addition of the word the is good. It's positive. But the machines, the AI, will actually tag that as negative sentiment. I'll give you another example. I just got back from Florida. We had like a 4-hour delay. I was really annoyed, right? What if I went to Twitter and I said something like, ugh, I just love it when I have a 4-hour delay on insert airline here and they lose my luggage, ugh, right? Well, the machine doesn't know, ugh. It might. But when you say something like, I just love it when, it's picking up on that word love, and it might score that, depending on your tool, as positive sentiment. That wasn't positive, right? So we always go through and look at the sentiment and then put a human eyeball on it. So in this situation, 80% of the complaints we had about downtimes were about overdraft, right? Hate overdraft and hate overdraft fees. And what they realized was during downtimes, overdraft protection wasn't available. It's one of the things that goes offline during these services. And usually they try to do them late at night so that it doesn't affect people. But that's literally what 80% of their customers said. So we went back to the team and we said, look, this is pretty simple. People are mad about overdraft. If you can find a way to make sure that they're covered even during downtimes, you're going to make 80% of the complaints that are coming through during downtimes disappear. So that's exactly what they did. They took away overdraft fees during downtimes. They made 80% of their complaining customers happy. And what do you think happens when you listen to your customers and you give them what they want? Surprise, we've already said it. They're more loyal, right? Coding and tagging with social listening, this is just another example. Again, you're going to go into this more in depth next with George, but essentially, we try to tag like literally everything, and we try to come up with all of the tags under the sun. So like tagging by product, tagging by sentiment type, your events would get tagged, your services would get tagged, your C-suite would get tagged, right? Tag all the things. And then wouldn't it be cool if you did your own little social penetration theory thesis? What if you tagged all of your outgoing content as the brand, cliche, fact, opinion, feeling, and then you tagged all of the incoming conversation you got from your customer base or would-be customer base, cliche, fact, opinion, feeling. As you started to share more opinions and feelings, what do you think you're going to see happen from your would-be and current customers? They're probably going to start sharing more feelings back. So social listening is a huge part of what we do because it really allows us to be proactive and collect more of that intelligence that we can go back and then make these really cool business decisions or updates with. Then analyzing and measuring for performance and sentiment. I can't tell you what your goals are, your KPIs, your metrics, but these are the questions that I think you need to start asking. And they're more about why versus what. Why do customers buy from us? If we're looking at all these conversations and these tags and we're using social listening, can we pinpoint why they buy from us or maybe why they don't? What motivates them or why do potential customers buy from us and not our competitors? Or the other way around. Why is our competitor kicking our butt? Right? We can look at some of those conversations there, just like I mentioned, and maybe pick up some ways that we can differentiate our brand and our brand messaging. And then 3, why is product service X under or overperforming? If you're tagging by product line, you can start to see some of those conversational trends that are happening, the sentiment behind them, the seasonality, Is it more acquisition? Is it more retention? These are all things that you can dig into, and this treasure trove of information that you'll get back will help you become better marketers. Last case that I'll give you, this is with a luxury appliance brand, and very expensive product, I know, because I want one and I can't afford it. But they put out this brand new cappuccino machine, and I'm talking like expensive. I want to say it was like $4,000 when it came out. So like I said, I can't afford it. But they're like, oh, it's a new machine. It's the updated model. Everybody's going to be so excited. They're all going to freak out. So we launched the product. We're obviously using social listening. And we see a lot of negative chatter happening around this particular product tag. And we're like, oh, what's going on? And as we dig into the negative chatter and the word clouds and what people are saying, what we find is that they can't figure out how to change the coffee filter in their really expensive machine, right? And that's not good, because when you spend that kind of money on a machine, it should basically like drive itself to wherever it needs to go to get fixed, right? So we come back to the client, we're like, oof, yeah, people are really not feeling the whole like changing the filter in this really expensive machine. And they're like, oh, yeah, don't worry about that. God, sorry, my ears are so small. They can just go to page like 437 in the service manual, and they can just figure out how to do it. And we were like, absolutely not. You're a luxury brand. You're marketing to luxury clients. They do not want to go to your Shakespearean novel of a service machine and figure out how to change the thing, right? Why don't you make a video showing people versus telling them how to change the coffee filter on this very expensive machine and then put it on the product page? And then what happens when consumers can't do something? They don't usually run to social to complain like they did in this case. That was probably second step, right? First step was what? Google. They went to go look up how to change the filter in this machine on Google, but there was nothing there. So the video on the product page solved a few different problems, right? One, it took them out of the dark ages with the whole like Shakespearean service manual. Two, when people went to go Google how to change this, there it was on Google, right? Nice and ranked up high. And then three, if they did come to social to complain, guess what? We got to be like, hey, we listened, we heard you, and this is what we created. And the machine can't do that. And that's why I say I love AI, I love technology, but the machine didn't make that creative decision. The machine brought the information back to our team to help us make that creative decision for the client. And you can see what happened. Over a 6-month period, not only did the negative sentiment, which is shown in green, go down about this product line, but the positive sentiment, the positive chatter about this very expensive machine went up. And what happens when peers are saying positive things about a brand's product online? Anybody? More people buy. Right, because it's that peer-to-peer recommendation versus the brand-to-peer recommendation. So, we're going to wrap it up in this little slide, and then I'll open it up for Q&A real quick. We have like a couple minutes. You have to accept that social is skyrocketing. This is where everybody's going. It's only going to continue to grow. We don't even really have that much more room to go, but with the metaverse and all that coming, we're going to spend more and more time on social and online. You have to know your customer's digital journey, meaning figure out all the places online where they interact with you. Figure out where you need to be and where you need to spend your time. Figure out how to have better conversations with opinions and feelings. I want you to listen and learn and take the lead. And to do that, don't forget the little exercise. I really think that all of you need to be investing in social media listening tools. It is such an undervalued tool. It has all the answers. Truly, that's how I feel. Understanding negative customer feedback is a superpower. I want you to be a negative Nancy. That is the only place where you can make change. And please build conversations that connect. You have to do that by A, joining the conversation, participating in the conversation, but doing so with less cliches and less facts. Thank you so much. Any questions really quick? We have like 30 seconds. Does anybody have a burning question? Tom?
So So this was years and years ago. I don't even remember the brand. But there was a brand that gained a lot of press when they started answering questions online through video.
Yes.
So, and I don't even remember the brand, but it's still I remember the experience, right? And
I think it was Wistia, wasn't it?
It might have been. So how come more brands are not doing that? I think it's a phenomenal idea, but do you have any idea why more brands are not doing that?
I have absolutely no idea, and if they're not, please send them to talk to me. It's crazy to me because it's low-hanging fruit, and you can see even from these are global enterprise-sized brands that we work with, and even those, I mean, we're talking MBA, PhD, they all thought that social chatter for acquisition was going to be 0 to 5%. They were floored when they saw that it was 50% and higher. We're actually working with a lot of their sales teams now to create better nurture content. So like lead gen content to answer those FAQs, right? Because again, we can create lead gen content all we want. That's what we think is going to be great. But if we actually have that conversation with the customer and we create the content based on what they're asking for, we'll do a better job. So thanks.